Hello and welcome. It's Francis here. Thank you for coming back to my channel. If this is your first time here, I bid thee welcome. There's a subscribe button and a bell below if you want to be notified as to when I upload more content, which I do on an ad hoc basis and on a whole range of subjects. And in today's video, I'm wanting to talk a little bit about the Hermetic Principles. Actually, because I sort of alluded to them in the previous video about manifestation. So I thought I might expand upon it because, again, this is one of the foundational teachings that used to be taught within magical orders and traditional craft, but these days, because things have changed, seems to have been overlooked, even though it still is interwoven throughout it, as well as pairing in various other spiritual teachings and even teachings including NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, neuro-linguistic programming, if to pronounce it properly. They also tap into aspects of these Hermetic principles. So what are they? You may or may not, depending on your era, be familiar with the Kybalion. Now, my edition is a fairly recent one, came out in the 2018, so it's not all that old. There are other versions of this, I think a blue version that came out in the last century, written by the three initiates. And no one truly knows who these three initiates were or are. But the 7 Hermetic principles are actually Hermetic philosophy that is believed or said to stem from ancient Egypt and ancient Greece. These 7 principles are based on these ancient doctrines where they aim to help us understand, there's just a spiral going across my notes, the nature of reality and also the nature of the self, meaning the soul, our place in the greater cosmic realm of things, so to speak. These 7 principles tend to be interrelated and interwoven with a certain degree, and there's a bit of an interplay between all of them. So we'll start with the first one. So I'm just going to go through a brief induction. There are more in-depth websites and books such as the Kybalion out there if you want to take it further, but just a brief introduction to them. And some of these, as I said, you may have heard of them before. So the first principle is the principle of mentalism. And according to the Kybalion, it states, all is mind, the universe is mental. It doesn't mean that the universe is crazy or anything like that, as we associate mentalism being. But it means that all outward manifestations of our reality are effectively in the mind or created by the mind. And if you've done any NLP, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. This is how we create our own reality. All material is seemingly said to be surrounded, and has been proven by science that all this material is actually made up of tiny particles of energy and empty space between them. So it depends on how dense something is or how gaseous something is. It's still the same, except for the more gaseous something is, the more space there is between these particles. Even our bodies are comprised of particles of energy, yet it all appears and seems to be solid. Perhaps the tangibility of our reality is merely our appreciation of things, our understanding of the information that we receive through our 5 senses, which can be somewhat limited. And then it goes into our conscious mind, where it gets processed according to what belief systems we have, and then we project this back onto the world. So reality actually is just an interpretation of the information that we have received in our minds. Our mental processes then can therefore create our experiences, our desires, our own perceptions, beliefs and attitudes, colour our experiences of reality, which is why two people, when witnessing the same thing, whether it's an accident, a movie, whatever, will pick up on different things, will feel differently. And the programming of our mind alters the reality for each of us. And that's just the first principle. So that's pretty deep if you start thinking about it. As I said, NLP is really big on this, so that's something else to think about. The second principle is the principle of correspondence, and if you're magically inclined, you're probably a little bit more familiar with this one. According to the Kybalion, as above, so below, as below, so above. And this describes the nature of our reality and our realities, both our external reality as well as internally. The laws of our reality and the Hermetic Principles are the same, regardless of what plane of existence we are on. I.e., there is a law of free will, that all beings, no matter what dimension, density, or universe they're in, all have free will. All are free to choose to manifest or not, to be controlled by or not by a higher power. There's also the law of attraction, of like attracts like. We each manifest our own personal and also our collective reality. So this is sort of going back to the principle of mentalism. We all see the same patterns on all levels. However, how we perceive them and how we interpret these patterns depends on where we are at, what lens we are looking at, what is our internal reality made up of and our external reality made up of. Therefore, how we feel or what we are internally can be very similar to external. So if we are feeling angry, mad inside, very possible that we will attract that energy and situations around us. And also if you look at things such as, say, a cell within our being dividing, science has proven that that cell division is very similar to the solar system dividing, or the birth of a new star or a new nebula. Looks very similar. One's a micro, one's a macro. So what is within us is reflected externally. And this ties in, as I said, with the principle of mentalism. Our reality is how we manifest it to be. So it's interesting that on some social media pages, every now and then you get people talking about shadows, shades, and things happening in their peripheral, externally. I sometimes wonder what they're doing or thinking or feeling internally. Have they manifested that out? Just a thought, just putting it out there. Because it's important to question your perceptions, your beliefs, your programming, in order to prove that your inner world and outer world are in sync. Moving on to the third principle, that of vibration. Nothing rests, everything moves, everything vibrates according to the Kybalion. So movement is everywhere. This is the law of our reality. Everything is in constant motion. Nothing stays still. We are all energy, and energy vibrates. Now, Nikola Tesla stated that if you want to find the secrets of the universe, things that you need to understand is that it's all in relation to energy, frequency, and vibration. This principle also applies to us, our own energetic fields, our own emotions. That's also energy as well. Our reality manifests according to our own vibration. Our experiences are matched with the level of our energetic vibration, and this is what I talked about in the previous video about manifesting, raising our vibration to meet that of something we desire, and we can much easily attain it. Another quote from the Kybalion is, all manifestation of thought, emotion, reason, will or desire, or any mental state or condition are accompanied by vibrations, a portion of which are thrown off and which tend to affect the mind of other persons by induction. This is very much like throwing the pebble into the pond. Our energy affects other people. This is the principle which produces a phenomenon of telephony. So we can be telepathic, we can pick up on how other people are feeling, thinking, depending on the level of our vibration and theirs. Mental influence and other forms of action and the power of mind over mind. It also relates to awareness of self. Self-happiness is the key, as we can tune it to any desired experience. The fourth principle is the principle of polarity. Everything is dual, everything has poles, everything has its pair of opposites. Like and unlike are the same. Opposites are identical in nature, but different in degree. Extremes meet. All truths are but half-truths. All paradoxes may be reconciled. So that's the quote from the Kybalion. So it's basically saying that everything has the polar opposites, and the polar opposites are the same thing. And when you think about it, hot and cold are temperatures. Happy and sad are extremes of emotions, how we are feeling. Intuitive and logical are ways of thinking, both at different polar ends, but they're still ways of thinking. They're still technically the same thing, and therefore these poles, this polarity that we have, is actually an illusion of the mind, going back to the principle of mentalism. The duality that we experience in this reality is something that we can recognize, something for what it is, extremes of one concept, enabling us to see the oneness in all things and recognizing where we are choosing, preferring, or judging based on a pole. Quite interesting when you start thinking of it. And another quote from the Kybalion, all paradoxes can be reconciled. Therefore, we are not able to speak in absolutes, or really should we be making assumptions. We can only be aware of the polarities. It is possible to change the vibrations of hate to the vibrations of love in one's own mind and in the minds of others according to the Kybalion. Pretty powerful stuff. The fifth principle is the principle of rhythm. Everything flows out and in. Everything has its tides. All things rise and fall. The pendulum's swing manifests in everything. The measure of the swing to the right is the measure of the swing to the left. Rhythm compensates. The Kybalion. So this explains the fundamental traits of reality and also our own experiences. Everything tends to repeat itself in rhythmic cycles with the subtle variations, so that the variation of the circumstance can be experienced. So we see over time the rise and fall of empires. We see more close to home the lunar cycles, the seasonal cycles, even the cycles of day and night, birth, life, death, rebirth. It all's ebbing and flowing. There's a rhythm to everything. And yes, there are slight variations, but it's still, on the greater whole, still is the same thing. Our moods not only swing from pole to pole, but also do so with rhythm. And to find out what our natural rhythm is a one way to view the swing between the poles that we have. And this does help to realize that good times and bad times, and we're not perpetually in downward cycles. There will eventually be an upward cycle. The sixth principle is that of cause and effect. Every cause has an effect, every effect has its cause. Everything happens according to law. Chance is but a name for law, not recognized. There are many planes of causation, but nothing escapes the law. And this is divine law we're talking about from the Kybalion. When everything happens, there is a reason why. Things don't happen by chance. One more thought can cause us to take action even days later, so we might not respond until later down the track. Circumstances and situations are attracted to us because of our beliefs, our vibration, what we are projecting, going back to the law of mentalism. The vibration we are holding, our rhythm. And all of this affects our reality that we are seeing through the lenses. And finally, probably the more controversial law in this day and age is the principle of gender. According to the Kybalion, gender is everything. Everything has its masculine and feminine principles. Gender manifests on our planes. Now, when we're talking about gender, we're not talking about sex. We're not talking about male, man, female, woman sex. We're talking about the energetic poles of masculine and feminine energy, the gender that catalyzes and catalysts each other. The genders that you can see within the Taoist symbol of the yin-yang, where there is the yin, the light side of the mountain, and the yin is the dark side of the mountain. Look at those two muddled up. And the yang, which is the masculine, is the light side of the mountain, and there's that tiny little part of each in each other to create the perfect balance. Masculine energies, and again, not talking about men, masculine energies relate to, sorry, the cat's just come in and destroyed everything. Masculine energies relate to reason, logic, analytical thought, drive, power, will, very left brain stuff. Feminine energies relate to creativity, intuition, imagination, feelings, emotions, empathy, nurturing, all right brain stuff. Now, when we want to add sex or human bodies into this, we can be both. We are both. So it goes beyond how we identify ourselves as a human being when we're talking about gender in the Hermetic Principles. So that's briefly, I'm just looking at the time, I think that's enough. I've waffled on about Cat's Destroyed Place, about the Hermetic Principles. The book is Kybalion. Have a good day today. And there are plenty of other links available. So as you can see, just listening to this, there is a lot of interwoven Hermetic ancient principles that can be found with these teachings, even today, in how you work your spells, how you perceive your place in the universe, why you do your magic, and even on a day-to-day level. They run and are woven through all our lives. Blessings.